Thank you, Herb, for that. And if you didn't do that, Sheridan would. Okay, so we're now in a little bit more formal mode where I can welcome Dr. Herb Levine for being our guest. Welcome a group of people, the core of whom are part of our Mefarshei Hazon Kaplan, our group of rabbis continuing to explore the insights of Mordechai Kaplan applied to 21st century Jewish life, and supplemented by people who I knew were very interested in that. So, for instance, Mel is the vice president and academic advisor of the Mordechai Kaplan Center for Jewish Peoplehood. He's always invited and always has rich perspectives to share. So, Mel, we're glad to see you. My wife, Deborah, has deep interest in spirituality, and as does my colleague, Rabbi Len Zukro. So I extended a few extra invitations to people who I thought were interested, a couple people who were very interested. We'll have to do the recording. That includes Rabbi Arnie Rackless, who was very impressed with the folder we sent of Herb's work, and Rabbi Sandy Sasso, who's done extraordinary work in liturgical innovation for adults, family, and children. And they will watch this via recording, as will numerous other people. I usually don't read the biography of a speaker, but Herb did us the favor, the tova of it being short. It's always good. And it ends with exactly where we will want to begin an exploration. So, Dr. Herb Levine's academic career and writing have focused on the intersection of poetry and spirituality in the two civilizations in which he belongs, the American and the Jewish. He was educated at Harvard and Princeton, at the Hebrew Teachers College, and at RRC. He has written books on Yeats, on the Psalms, on a collection of articles about Walt Whitman with Rabbi Rena Spicehandler on the call. He has translated works of Agnon, Mendele Mocher Sephorim, and the still unknown, maybe not forever, Elisheva Bichasky. In his Siddur, in a new key, he brings together his lifelong immersion in poetry, in spirituality, in the two languages of his soul, Hebrew and English. A poetic biography. They're not all that way. I just want to add two notes from the Kaplan Center for context, and then turn it over to Herb to explore with you the new Siddur, what's behind it, and some of the products and artifacts of it. The first thing I want to note is that a number of people have commented over the course of the year that if there's a Kaplanian trilogy that runs something like Judaism as an evolving civilization, or Al Shlosha Devarim, one pillar, peoplehood, a second pillar, and a third being naturalistic theologies, these people have noted that in the marketplace of American Jewish ideas, peoplehood and Judaism as a evolving religious civilization have found their ways into most non-Orthodox orientations. They have become our lexicon, which is a good thing. Occasionally, we ask people to be careful about the B'Shem Umro and to quote Kaplan or credit Kaplan when they're using these concepts. But by and large, we're very happy that's happened. The same people who made these comments said, the one part of that Al Shlosha Devarim that we haven't fully actualized yet, and really is our gateway to reaching new audiences with the Kaplanian message, is that large group of people who are looking for non-supernatural approaches to the divine. That has not woven into the warp of North American Jewish experience. Hence, we should, ironically, those two people couldn't make it, but they'll hear the recording again. But we should be really investing and experimenting with those approaches. Shamati, I heard their request. I thought there was a great deal of validity, and that's one of the reasons I was delighted to invite Herb Levine to be with us. Second thing, just a quick bit of personal reflection. From 1995 to 2005, I myself was involved in helping reconstructing Judaism develop new approaches to prayer and spirituality through a volume called Connecting Prayer and Spirituality, a guide to Kol Nishama, and then the volume I authored with Sandy Sasso called Kol HaNoar, The Voice of Children. And while I was doing that, that was probably the last time I read deeply Kaplan around prayer and spirituality. But I was quite captured by something that came to me, us, courtesy of Mel and Manny Goldsmith, who in their book, Dynamic Judaism, have a selection about prayer. And there was one sentence that knocked me off my chair. Kaplan said, you know, asking why people pray is a little bit like asking why people breathe. It's built into who we are, into our spiritual, biological nature, is what I took Kaplan to be saying. So you don't have to go up in the heavens or employ the most sophisticated supernatural approaches. It's accessible. As I thought about her being with us, it also gave me time to think about that the metaphor both conceals and reveals. It's important because it opens up explorations of naturalistic prayer, but it conceals the fact that breathing isn't as natural as we thought. Over the last 15 years, I've had opportunities to do sacred chanting, sacred breathing, qigong, courtesy of Deb. And what I realized is that there's an art to breathing. Al hat kama v'kama. There's an art to prayer. Even if it's natural, it's rich and complex. And what I get very excited about when I think of spending this time with her is we need to keep exploring the nature of the choreography of prayer, of the depth, and the way in which, even though natural, it's rich and complex and demands analysis and dialogue. So those are two Kaplan Center connections, and Herb, I am delighted to turn it over to you to begin our exploration. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for inviting me. I'm very moved to be here and delighted. Just want to say that all of you who support the Kaplan Center, have in Jeffrey a remarkable executive director who is just a super mensch, and I value his friendship a great deal. I have two introductory comments to make. One is responding to what Jeffrey just offered us, that prayer is not as comprehensive word in English as tefillah is in Hebrew, because tefillah has in it praise, which we don't necessarily think of as prayer. Prayer we think of as petitionary. The word prayer is got a petitionary emphasis to it. Hitpalel is, as we know, a reflexive. So it has a self, the self is the audience of Hitpalel, if I can count, of tefillah, or if we were to make up a noun, if there were a noun Hitpalalut, then you would see how the self is the audience of the activity of being Mitpalel. There's a naturalism built into the word tefillah. I've never written about this, Jeffrey, so this is just occurring to me as we say it, although I do have one poem prayer poem in which I talk about the word being in the reflexive. That's that as a naturalistic someone, I am called to praise the world. That's my poetic, and there's a long heritage going back to the Psalms and beyond the Psalms. In every tradition, there are catalogs of objects that are really praising the world we live in. I think in a naturalistic context, petitionary prayer is much more difficult. And in my Siddur, I don't really have petitionary prayer. I have prayer that makes the self aware of what the self requires and needs, but it's not petitioning something outside the self. But when I praise, I have chosen to praise the universe. And I feel it really imperative for us to have a language of praise that begins with the facts of science as we understand them. The fact of evolution, the fact of before evolution, the facts of cosmology. And I have tried, as I will show you in my prayer poems, to make them responsive to and responsible about the scientific truths that are central to our worldview as contemporary Jews. So that's my first comment about naturalism and science and praise. They all go together under one rubric. The second is more specifically about Kaplan and Reconstructionism. I think that there has been an inherent conflict between the goals that Kaplan had for his reconstruction of Judaism. When he wrote a book called Judaism Without Supernaturalism, he didn't take into account that the choice he had made to keep the sancta of the Jewish people essentially the same as they had always been, with minor changes around the edges for things like chosenness and Mashiach language, but essentially to keep the language of a God who is the agent who created the world, who gave us the Torah, who called to us. All of that was a very conservative choice that has determined how people in Reconstructionist congregations think about God. They may know, they read the commentary in Kol HaNeshama, and they know that there is more there than that modifies what's said on the other side of the page, or above the line, above the line. But when they're wrestling with God, what I have heard from people in congregations is that they still have that dayan in mind. And that's why I thought we might begin with a conversation about what I have done with the words that I inherited as a child, Baruch Dayan Emet. A long time ago, the words Dayan Emet had a resonance to them that said that what we're doing now is saying that this death that occurred was correct. It was a righteous act. And of course, it's the funeral service is called Siddur Kadin. And so we have to become matzdikim. We have to make it okay that this death has happened. And that on a psychological level, that's correct. We all have to accept death. But do we need to feel that there was a judge implied, or is death rather to be seen naturalistically as part of a natural cycle? And so in coming up with a new phrase, a Kaplanian, if you will, phrase for Baruch Dayan Emet, when you hear of a death, I came up with Baruch HaGoral Shabal Lechulanu. Blessed is the destiny that comes to all of us. Baruch HaGoral Shabal Lechulanu. There is no Dayan. There is no, that this isn't an act of judgment. This isn't a din that has been perpetrated by a supernatural force. It just happened. Death happens, and death happens for all kinds of bodily reasons. So if that's where I thought we could begin our conversation with, could you find yourself saying Baruch HaGoral Shabal Lechulanu as an opening, and recognizing that by saying Baruch, you are keeping the sancta of the Jewish people working. You are saying we live in a universe in which we want to acknowledge our role in feeling brachot, in feeling blessed, in feeling fulfilled, in feeling abundant life. And that the word bracha conveys that. But if we move away from a God figure, then new possibilities open up. I'll stop there and see if anybody wants to respond to that. Blessed is the destiny that comes to all of us. Baruch HaGoral Shabal Lechulanu.
Herb, thank you. Because what you just shared resonates for me, because one of the other hats that I wear is that of a hospice chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
And in that role, and also in the role as a congregational rabbi, we do Kriya and say Dayan Emet. And I often will parenthetically say, or couch that, to deal with Dayan and say, we may not agree with the Dayan's decision, which, hearing you now causes me some angst, appropriately so, with how I approach that. And your beautiful poetry responds to that. So let me just stop here and say thank you. I really appreciate what you've done, because it solves my problem and gives me new language that better serves me as a chaplain, and in so doing, working with the patients and their families and congregants in this way.
Thank you.
I
Others?
want to thank Herb for helping us to focus on the most difficult situation, which is our mortality. To say that the destiny is blessed is to, I think, indicate where we would like to be in terms of accepting death. And people don't like to think about it. I'm in a couple of weeks going to be 89, and I'm very, very aware. I have sicknesses that are minor for the moment, but I'm very aware that I don't have much time in terms of my life, and so many friends and so many people. I mean, I knew Harold Kushner when we were young, um, and so uh, considering prayer um, as um, you know, our enemies mock us and say we pray to whom it may concern. But in reality, what we're doing, I think, is presenting an ideal where we would like to be. Um, the prayer focuses, in a certain sense, on the contrast between where we are and where we would like to be. And I would like to be in a situation where I bless the element of mortality when I lose somebody who is close. And and so it's what you're doing is you're challenging me in the most fundamental way that prayer ought to do, and I appreciate that.
What I'm trying to do is take away that lens of having to argue with the tradition at the moment that the affirmation needs to be made, and the journey toward acceptance is in motion. At that moment when you do Kriya with the family shouldn't have to be about, for that family, well, do I believe this stuff or don't I? It should be about, is there a language with which I can ritualize my commitment to be here now, to be in this moment, and to see it as a sacred moment in the journey of life?
Herb, I was very touched when I first saw this and remained touched. And also just, I guess, the same ambivalence perhaps that Len was feeling. Uh, there's something wonderful about it and something a bit incomplete. So Goral indeed is something that's universal, but it also feels, and there is inevitability to death. So I get that. But I'm wanting to combine Goral Lekulanu with an ending that goes something like Baruch atah Adonai Makor Chaim Umavet. Somehow I want the texture of
Right.
life and death to come through, as well as the fact that there's a package we call fate that puts them together.
Right, right. So here's something I want to point out to this group. This is a roundabout answer to that. For many people, Kol Neshama, when it came out in the 1990s, was revolutionary in having so many ways in English of imagining God. And Joel Rosenberg's English translations were beautiful, but for other people, the Hebrew was already dead in the water when it came out because it didn't get rid of Melech HaOlam. And what you just did was Makor HaChaim, which you got via Marcia Falk, my collaborator, my predecessor in this work. So that is really interesting in of itself. There was a name in Kol HaNeshama that could have gotten the Reconstructionist movement a good deal of the way toward where it wanted to go. That is Chei HaOlamim, the life of all the worlds. And it is in there once or twice, but it did not become standard in any way that challenged the personification associated with Melech. But everywhere I lived in Mount Airy for the next 30 years after the Siddur came out, pretty much the circle I traveled in dropped Melech and started saying Ruach HaOlam. And that, I think, is the most decisive shift in Jewish theology in our time. It's been associated with Jewish renewal and not with Reconstructionism, where it could have been lodged, precisely because the Reconstructionists in the 1990s put out a book that was still attached to the personification associated with the word Adonai, and the personification, which is hierarchical, and the personification associated with the word Melech, which is hierarchical. And here we are living in a democratic culture in which Kaplan himself said democracy is part of the ongoing revelation of the divine in the world. And we haven't figured out how to make our liturgy democratic and non-hierarchical. So I do imagine that an answer to my Siddur could be Chei Olamim, or a Siddur, Siddur Ruach HaOlam. The reason I didn't go there is it has a shred of the ghost in the machine. That is that there is a spiritual entity, a theos, a God in the world. And all I see in the world is process. And so calling it Adonai is, I think, a huge part of the problem I experience. If we were all Arthur Wascovians and we were all saying Yehovah, I wouldn't have problems with Yud He Vav He, because as Art Green has said, is, was, will be is hard to object to as a word describing the process of being and becoming. So I support your thought, Jeff, and this book is still in process, and I'm sure that today's conversation may influence its further development. I see us as being in the beta testing phase. Jeff is holding up something for us to look at. Go ahead, Jeff.
So I have here the pilot, the Erev Shabbat book that came out, Herb, where they did the denominator God. Do you remember when that came out? We had it. So that came out in '89, and the different congregations got to use it. And I think my own feeling is that it would have been exciting and challenging if we kept Yah celestial, Yah the utmost, all of the different the names of God, in that would have, I think, challenged us to really look at what are the different aspects, adjectives of what God could be. I thank you, Herb, because for the thousands of funerals when I've done Kriya and stood there, and it's one thing when someone dies at 120. Mel, it should be many years for you, okay? So don't worry about it. But my good friend Jeffrey Shine is turning 75 next week. So that's pretty old. But we all have been there with the tragic deaths. When the Dayan Emet is really something that I would choke on when I would say it, when we would do Kriya. And those are the things that really were problematic. Mel, you mentioned Harold Kushner, who Alav Shalom, who just died. It was Kushner who helped me really back in the 70s and 80s put together an understanding of how you could talk about when God is, rather than how to respond to that. So I just wanted to bring that up. Jeffrey, do you have an old copy of this laying around? Yeah, okay.
No, thank you for that, Jeff. And Deborah wants to get into this.
Yeah, I just want to share from a non-rabbinical perspective my work in spirituality that looks at spirituality without referencing God and religion. There's language of force, like an energy force. It originates from many places, but for me as an early childhood educator, comes from Montessori spiritual embryo, find as a horme or a force that pushes the child towards learning. And that force, I'm guessing when you die, leaves your body. You know, that this is a universal perspective of a spiritualness that's internal. And the work that I'm doing, well, not doing, but I've read of Lisa Miller, who does the neurological research on spiritualness and how it's naturally ingrained in us and how it needs to be nurtured to help provide resiliency for a good life, all part of that force. So I just throw that out as interesting.
That's wonderful. And if you could put the name in the chat of that author, that would be good for those who.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can, sorry.
Go ahead, Len.
Thank you. I want to follow up on what Jeff just brought up, and that is when we have tragic deaths. And we know what those categories are. And I wonder how we use this language, because one of the contentions that I have for myself is that I think the whole use of language around death and funerals really speaks to when we really speak theology. And that is, if you want to know what a community's theology is, go to a funeral. Because how that pastor, preacher, imam, rabbi is going to speak about that moment tells you what they really believe. So how does that fit in, Herb, with the kind of language that you want to capture to address not only how we talk about Dayan or not talk about Dayan, but speak to people in a way that resonates and is meaningful?
Well, thank you. I mean, I want to get part of my plan for this was to begin with this discussion because it was really Jeffrey's. Jeffrey and I had some back and forth about this, and I had sent this stuff to Jeff, and he said, highlight this Baruch Dayan Emet change that you're making. So he was quite prescient in understanding how to focus this, but I don't want the whole discussion to be just about our theology around death. I would like to begin to show you parts of the Siddur that are maybe more challenging for us to look at because they are about Matbeya HaTfilah. They're about what we say in from Baruch Hu to Shema. I'd like to show that to you to see how this language could be used in congregations and by individuals who are seeking a language that feels Judaic, but pushes Jewishness in a new dimension, which is why I've called it Siddur in a new key, because it's like listening to a new kind, listening to a symphony in a way we've never heard that symphony before. Jeffrey, if you want to.
No, I just want to, as you bring up the document, I think you're near that point.
I want to
thank
welcome
Rabbi Gail Schuster-Buskila for making us international from Israel. So glad that you're with us, Gail.
Nice to meet you, Gail. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to bring up.
I had a busy day working, so, and grandchildren, so this is all I can do.
Rena is in Israel and also is dealing with grandchildren. So, okay. So here is Siddur in a new key, blessed are you, wondrous universe. And let me I sent you the table of contents, and I sent you the material from the section on death, or at least.
Herb, if I can interrupt you.
Yes.
Mordecai is spelled with a C-A-I, and you have it here spelled C-H.
I will change that immediately. Thank you.
Mordecai never spelled with C-H.
Okay, thank you so much. So here you see my opening of this is my version of Modeh Ani. I thank you, living and enduring universe, for restoring my breath. How great are your wonders. And in Hebrew, Odelecha olam chai v'kayam, shehechazarta li neshimati, ma nifla'im ma'asecha. Now, you'll note that I'm writing in the 21st century in a Siddur Hebrew, and I am undermining the premises of the Siddur. I'm challenging. Let's say challenging rather than undermining.
Herb, I want to thank you for, like Len had a discovery moment before, and I am too now. I've never liked Shechazarta Bi. It feels like a surgeon is putting a soul into me. And when I see Shechazarta Li, that it's for me or to me, I'm in relationship with that soul. It's a very small change, but I think very profound. So thank you.
I also, you'll note as you know in Hebrew, neshama and neshima are cognate, and I have said neshimati because all I know in the morning is that I have breath. I have to work on my soul during the day, so I want to give you that, and then I'm jumping ahead to the Baruch Hu. I have a Psuke de Zimra. Actually, I do want to highlight one thing in Psuke de Zimra. They say that life began through a crack in the ocean floor, that heat rose and still rises from the core of the earth, catalyzing the salty waters, giving birth to the amino acids. In them, the genealogy of life in the sea, on land, and in the air. The psalmist sings, with you is the source of life. Every day, I too acknowledge the source of life that still enlivens my breath. Look at that, I have a tet for a T. Okay, well, that will be fixed. Now, in Hebrew, because this is a group that can appreciate that, Shar Meshorer HaTehilim Imcha Mekor Chayim Gam ani modeh b'chol yom limkor hachayim she'adayin mechayeh et neshimati. So I stick with that idea of my breath as the source of that force, of my connection to that life force that Debbie talked about. It's very important to me that I did this in 2 languages, because otherwise Hebrew is our touchstone of how to connect to our heritage. That's a controversial statement that's designed for another webinar I know that Jeffrey had recently, the Kaplan Center had, and I was part of it. So here is my Baruch Hu, invitation to pray in community. Join me to praise the awesome universe we live in. Let us praise our world and recognize what's good in it. May we grow the good of our world for generations to come. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 da. Join me to praise the awesome universe we live in. Let us praise our world and recognize what's good in it. May we grow the good of our world for generations to come. Baruch hu et ha'olam ha'atzum, nivarech et olamenu v'nakir b'tuvo, nizkeh laha'atzim et tuvo, l'dorei dorot. I learned this, that atzum could become a verb. From my friend, the poet Hanoch Guy, who worked with me on the Hebrew, helping me get my Hebrew to where it could be. Okay, so let's just stop there before I go further. The tune is central to who we are. The tune is central to the sancta of the Jewish people. Up till now, Adonai has been central to the sancta of the Jewish people, but Adonai is a circumlocution because we're still dealing with a prohibition against saying Yud He Vav He, which is got to be one of the craziest things that we do. We don't say Hashem, okay, every time we say it, but we're still saying Adonai because our ancestors said Adonai, because when our Torah came together, the book of Dvarim, we were living in the Assyrian Empire, and the Assyrian king was called Melech Malchei Hamlachim. But we live in a post-Einsteinian world in which the Big Bang is the origin of everything, and we can't get back beyond the Big Bang. So this is why I talk about Ha'olam Ha'atzum. Now, I want to just show you what comes next. This is my Yotzer. And I am going to take a moment as you look at this and play you a tune that Shefa Gold has written for it.
Can you move the words back a little bit?
I will.
Let us praise the light that burst forth from that great and awesome blast, giving birth to what lives and grows as sunshine nourishes the earth. In the voids of the cosmos, through time and space, the glorious first light still shines. God, Lord, the Choshech mipnei or, hallelujah, hallelujah. Let us praise the soothing dark that ends the task of each day. A cradle song for our soul, longing for fresh morning. In the voids of the cosmos, through time and space, awesome darkness encompasses all. God, Lord, the Choshech mipnei or, hallelujah, hallelujah. Infinite universe, revealing and dark. Oh, the Choshech mipnei or, hallelujah.
I'd love your comments on this as a davening experience that I just allowed you to have. Imagine yourself in a congregation that was willing to learn that Shefa tune, and that was willing to have a Yotzer bracha that does both morning and evening, because you only have them once a day, right? You don't have them twice a day. You don't have them 3 times a day. We have a different Yotzer for the morning, which is about sun, and we have a different Yotzer for the evening, which is about the bringing on of evening. And that made a lot of sense when Jews prayed 3 times a day. Any comments on both the poem and the setting of the poem, the combination of English and with the Hebrew refrain as the sanctum that is brought into this new poem, new prayer poem?
Could you show the Hebrew again?
I will show you all the Hebrew. Nishabeach et haor hamitparetz mehamapatz hagadol v'hanora shemolid kol chai v'tzomeach derech hashemesh shemezin et kol nefashot tevel v'chalalei hayikum u'v'merchavei hazman hadar or hakadmoni mazhir. Nishabeach nechoshech hamargia shesam ketz l'mesimot hayom shir eres l'nafshotenu hamidga'agot l'vkarim ra'ananim. V'chalalei hayikum u'v'merchavei hazman choshech nora mechil et hakol. Baruch atah yikum ein sofi golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or.
I don't know, maybe English sounds better. I find that Baruch atah yakum and Sophie. I understand what you said before about Adonai and Yud He Vav He, and the question is, I don't know if that, to me, that's not a problem, because I don't have a personal God, so I don't have a problem of the name, but I do understand changing the English, but I don't know, and this is of course because I've been here for so many years that I just don't know. It may work for the English speakers. I'm just not sure. I don't know.
So if it said Baruch atah chei ha'olamim, would that work for you?
There's so many different alternatives. You know, our Siddur in the Hebrew is, it's like, one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. I don't know. You have to do what's good for your community. I think that we both know that
yeah.
It may not, but.
So here's the thing, right? Let me respond to this.
Please.
I'm a poet who has tried to become a liturgist. And to be a liturgist, you have to speak for the community. But I'm way ahead of the community here. I have figured out how to speak as a poet in a we voice, because that's what liturgy has to do. But you have to want to become a part of my we. And I recognize that the Hebrew is beyond 99% of American Jews, 99.5% of American Jews. My Hebrew, I mean, the earlier Hebrew I showed you when I did the Baruch Hu and that very short introduction to the Modani, my version of Modani, both of those are in the realm of anybody who knows synagogue Hebrew. But this poem is way beyond that.
The poem itself is gorgeous. It's the fact that you remove the third element of that little phrase. I don't know. To me, if you said Baruch atah Adonai, what is it? I don't see I would find it to be better in the Hebrew. You can do whatever you want in the English if you know the
I see. So what you're saying is keep.
I just feel or write it.
Keep Yud He Vav He, Baruch atah Yud He Vav He, Yukum Ein Sofi. And if you want to say Adonai, you could. But my Yukum Ein Sofi becomes a denominator of Yud He Vav He, as
Not
it
bad.
were.
I like it. Not bad. I just have a problem about a bracha, which is such a well-known bracha. I don't mean that you can't change. Who is my rabbi? Okay, and that. But even he could not. And Mel, correct me if I'm wrong. He did not want to lose that word.
100 years ago, he couldn't. Now the question is, what can we do now to be Kaplanian? And what you're just suggesting to me, or what I just came up with in relationship to what you just suggested, is how to bring my changes to make them less revolutionary and to make them more evolutionary.
Is that
because there
so less revolutionary? Or I'm not sure that you add that Yudevave with what you put there is
No,
so
no, that-
not revolutionary.
no, that-
That's
exactly.
revolutionary.
No, no,
I mean,
that's a change in the direction of evolutionary instead of revolutionary. Another,
Yeah.
it takes away
you know,
So
it takes away some of the critique I've gotten, which is, you're a pagan, basically. You're, you're just, the whole of the Torah and the Tanakh is against paganism, and you're saying to us, let's revel in what is and make it our ultimate. And I hear what you're saying. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
no, it's very related, I think. So I do want to, Herb, suggest to you and to others the Talmud page on our homepage of the Kaplan Center website, which is a dialogue between Eric Kaplan and Catherine Madsen and Rabbi Jeremy Schwartz. And Eric talks about prayer and what Kaplan called transvaluation and revaluation. So it's a very subtle distinction, but in the course of that dialogue, he references something that Ira Eisenstein mentioned, which is sometimes you do prayer by citation. And that's when you balance the need for revolution with the need for continuity, and you've privileged continuity. So in that instance, you use the traditional formulation, and Eric talks about there's sometimes when you can't do that, when he can't do that, around chosenness and other things. But it's a matter of balance. And I just want to say I love I don't think we do enough listening to Hebrew without the burden of translation. I think it's its own language, obviously, and it has great beauty. And I would love to see our congregations find time and space to simply hear the beauty of the Hebrew language in a way that's recited without the additional responsibility of putting it into a nusach and singing it.
The prayer by citation, the most famous example of that citation is, of course, the Shema. And so when the whole of this central act of Jewish prayer is a recitation of a citation. So let me go to what my version of Shema is, which is, you're going to find, once again, challenging and provocative, because that's who I have chosen to be in my 70s. It's all because my teacher, when I was 12 years old, taught me the Philip Roth story, the conversion of the Jews, about this kid who climbs to the roof and makes all the Jews say that there's no difference between Kriyat Yam Suf and the virgin birth. Here we go. About to do the Shema with you. Here we go. Okay, here it is in English. Would you like to hear it first in Hebrew or in English? Let me do it in Hebrew first.
Okay. Do it in Hebrew, then English, and end with Hebrew.
Okay.
At least for the core.
Okay. Shema, ma'ashrim et emunatenu. We affirm our faith. Shema Yisrael, haaretz hi beitenu, haaretz hi achat. Nagin aleha lachai v'latzomeach. Ne'ahav et yofyo, neshabech et morkavuto. Baruch hamakom shanachnu chayim bo, ein od. Brucha at tevel beitenu v'yoshvei va. Baruch atah olam atzum v'chol asher bo. Yihiyu hadvarim ha'ela asher anachnu omrim hayom al levaveinu. V'nishne otam levanenu ulevnotenu. Shehem yishnu otam levnotehem ulevnehem acharehem. Kol od sherucham me'orer otam lashir. And here is the English. I need to move you away. There you go. Shema, affirming what we believe. Listen, O people of Israel, earth is our home, earth is one. Let us protect it for the sake of everything that lives and grows. Let's love its beauty and praise its complexity. Blessed is the place where we live. There is no other for us. We bless you, planetary home, and all who dwell thereon. We praise you, awesome cosmos, and all that is in you. May these words which we speak today be in our hearts. May we repeat them to our sons and daughters. May they repeat them to their daughters and sons for as long as they have breath to sing. Shema Yisrael, haaretz hi beitenu, haaretz hi achat. Nagein aleha lachai v'latzomeach, nehavet yofyo, neshabeach et morkevuto. Baruch hamakom, shanachnu chayim bo, ein od. Brucha at tevel beitenu v'yoshvei ba, Baruch atah olam atzum v'chol asher bo. Yiyu hadvarim ha'ele asher nachnu omrim hayom al levaveinu v'nishne otam levaneinu levnotenu shehem yishnu otam levnotehem ulivnehem acharehem kol od sherucham me'orer otam lashir. So, this is who I am. This is what I want to affirm. This is what I think we Jews need to say about our place in the world. This is what a group that doesn't affirm chosenness how it might structure or it might commit to certain things in its liturgy. These are my commitments. And I found a language that's traditional enough in Hebrew to Lane and is poetic enough in English, I hope, to be resonant and heart opening. Comments?
A quick
I
comment
was
about.
talking, but I was on mute.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was thinking as I was listening that what you've just written speaks to the hundreds of people who call themselves spiritual and not religious.
Right.
This language, my sister would love this.
The fastest growing group of American Jews are people who consider themselves Jewish with no religion.
It's universal. It's in all religions and it's throughout the world.
I understand that. But I'm just talking about Jews and a Jewish movement to reach out to those people who would never be caught dead in a synagogue. Now, the power of Richard Dawkins coined the term meme, M-E-M-E, which my granddaughter now uses in a completely different way than he does, because it's now an internet meme. But what Richard Dawkins meant by meme was a cultural ceremony that has its own DNA to replicate it. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad is a Jewish meme, the fundamental Jewish meme that anybody raised as a Jew knows. And memes, the most common meme in American life is the Christmas tree. And people have Christmas trees because they grew up with a Christmas tree and they want their children to have a Christmas tree. The most common Jewish meme is the Siddur. The second most common Jewish meme, perhaps, is candle lighting on Hanukkah. The question is, can we create new Jewish memes? Marcia Falk tried in her way 30 years ago, and we're beginning to see some of her work catch on in Israel. I'm trying in my own way now, and I'm trying to learn with you how to do this in a way that is both provocative and comforting at the same time. Basically, I want it to be true. I want it to pass the truth test. So I'm going to finish. Jeffrey asked me to finish with something related to Shavuot. So I'm going to finish with a Torah poem and my Torah blessings. And then I have to go down this way to get there. Okay, I'm in just about the right place.
If I could break in
Please.
with a word from Mordechai Kaplan.
Yeah.
Our and
sponsor.
I think what Herb is doing is he is channeling Kaplan. The introduction to the 1945 prayer book is really quite an amazing document. And Kaplan says about prayer, if prayer is to be genuine and not merely a recital of words, the worshiper must, of course, believe in God. And then he goes on to explain that we have to reinterpret what we mean by God. And he says, in part, there is a universal spirit that transcends and uses nature in some way as the human spirit transcends and uses the bodily organs of men. I just feel that so much of what Herb is doing accepts, the reality of the divine and the idea that Kaplan is talking about when he says the universal spirit is embodied in the world, and as the mind is embodied in the body.
Thank you, Mel. It's a beautiful bracha. Let's look at these brachot l'kriyat Torah to finish.
I just want to say about the word haaretz in the Shema.
Yeah.
You using it in America might be fine in the Hebrew, but it's not. That's not the connotation, as big a connotation as you want. Haaretz in Hebrew is more like Israel.
I understand you.
I think that you better, because if you want to talk about
you're right.
That world, you're going to have to find a synonym which might not be as nice and cozy. But
thank you. That's very helpful.
I do want to say something about what you've done here, though, because the idea is beautiful. I don't like to seem negative, One of my bosses once told me I have to try and start saying something positive. I should have said it that first. But in any case,
I hear you.
I'm not very spiritual in some ways because, of course, there's all different sorts of reasons. But that you're trying to do this, I'm astounded. I think that the things here are such an important important nature. And if your goal is to bring people who don't have this religious feeling, right?
Mhm.
This is a wonderful effort, and I'm astounded. You know, one word here, one word there does not take away from the real beauty of what's going on here.
Thank you. Jeffrey asked me to lead us toward Shavuot to finish. Here is my Lifnei Kriya before the Torah reading. Brucha Mesoratenu Shemachadeshet Torah B'chol Dor. Before you hear the words of Torah, blessed is our tradition that renews Torah in each generation. After the Torah reading and the perhaps the illumination of it through commentary, Brucha Mesoratenu Shemidamyenet Torah Ke'esh Mitaher, that compares Torah to a purifying fire. Lahag Bahat HaTorah, Zot HaTorah Asher Sam Ezra Lifnei B'nai Yisrael Al Pi HaMasorah B'Shem Moshe. That scans, by the way. Zot HaTorah Asher Sam Ezra Lifnei B'nai Yisrael Al Pi HaMasorah B'Shem Moshe. And then there's nothing wrong with Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachzikim Ba V'Tomcheha Me'ushar Dracheha Darchei Noam V'Chol Netivoteha Shalom. Ad Kan, my presentation of this webinar to the Kaplan Center. Thank you for all your comments, for your wrestling with me, and for your taking seriously what I've been doing here in my solitude in Florida and in Maine, trying to find a way forward for people like myself and the Jewish people who want a Hebraic, Judaic idiom for that universal spirituality that Debbie spoke about. I'm going to turn it over to Jeffrey to close us out.
Well, her Hamon Toda, just a whole wave of thank yous for challenging us and giving us stimulating new language. I do have one suggestion, Herb, not about the content, but about someone who I think would utilize some of these prayers, and a clarification. You've given us the resource in a file with your writings and thoughts and new prayer liturgies. B'Shem Omro, if we quote you, if we find some context, whether at a funeral or some other place, are you comfortable are using it, or would you prefer, given that you're—
absolutely. And you don't even, if it's at a funeral, don't even do B'Shem Omro.
Yeah.
I remember when my colleague Marcia was coming out with her work, and she was very concerned about the copyright. I'm not. So there's nobody else who's gonna do this. Yeah.
Very good.
Mel,
let me just finish this thought, and then you'll come in. No, go ahead. Go now, because I'll wrap things up. Mel, go ahead.
On May the 17th, I'm going to be having a conversation with our rabbi about my latest thinking on Kaplan. And part of it will be about prayer, and part of it will be an advertisement for Herb Levine. And I hope you will tune in.
We will send you a link for that. The Kaplan Center is eager to support that.
I'm meeting tonight with a group of non-Jewish religious educators who are looking at spirituality and how we can use spirituality to help with equity, especially for low income people, and the big picture. Anyway, I'm going to share this with them too.
I think, Deb, you should invite Herb to do a little workshop for your soul to soul group. I think
No,
they
he
would.
should write an article for Soul to Soul.
Well, okay, I'll leave
Yeah, we'll
you
talk to you later.
be the shine that. Herb, on the Kaplan Center website, there's an innovation garden of projects that we've endorsed because we think they're wonderful forms of education. One of them is, you'll see, just mark, the deep dive by Eliana Light, and I'm wondering if you know Eliana or know her work.
I don't.
So you ought to. You can find contact information there by going to the page that describes her project. And what I think Eliana has done workshops for the Kaplan Center and for Mayim Rabim, and she's quite wonderful at exploring liturgical alternatives to help people gain deeper meaning. I think that you would push her spectrum in a very positive way, and you ought to be in touch. She would appreciate, she sort of takes us to the edge of liberal, conservative, renewal, innovation, but she certainly would want to go further and help people understand that there's this yet other way, more radical in some ways, to understand it. And I see you as having a value to one another. So I recommend that you seek her out.
Yeah, and perhaps you can make that introduction.
I will do that after we end the webinar.
Good.
So any closing comments? I've seen a couple chat comments that have been thank you. This has been wonderful, revelatory in some Kaplanian fashion, and of great value, and something that I think we'll all keep thinking about.
Thank you, Herb. Thank
More
you
will
for
be
the
revealed.
introduction.
More will be revealed.
What will be revealed? The ongoing process of innovation, of course.
This is what my beta testing is all about. This was very important for me today. Thank you very much.
We're glad to have been a part of it. Okay, I'm going to hang on with, I'll see my wife Deborah a little later. I'm going to hang on with Jeffrey for a minute, if that's okay, and say goodbye to other folks. Wish you well. Gail, thanks for joining us. Len, you too, as well. Mel.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Hey.
Hi.
Hi. That was very rich, I thought.
Yeah, good. But you know, it's funny because it reminded me of where this went, you know, and you know, testing it out. I remember using the Friday night and trying to get a different look at theology. This is the next step, you know, of I think it's a good transition. I'm not sure I like all the Hebrew. You know, I think it has to be. There's got to be more formula to it.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I do understand that. You know, when Len was on, it was reminding me of the years because he followed me in San Bernardino, you know, that story at Emmanuel.
Yeah.
And that was during the years of Sharei Tefillah, when there were 10 different services, and the way that overwhelmed the congregation writ large, because it's too much to process, and created the need for what became Mishkan Tefillah.
Right.
So Eric's very good about this, as you will remember, in his workshop about prayer, innovation, liturgy, that one strategy is to put it all to the side, to make it all kavanah, not keva. And I think what Herb does in a very brave and important way is to suggest it has to be keva as well as kavanah.
Yeah, right. There's got to be a kavanah within the keva, which I appreciate. You know.
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks for being with us, Jeffrey. I don't know what happened to Michael and Sid, but they'll get the replay. But I'm glad you were with us. I thought it was really it's very important. So
Yeah, no,
yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
good. You getting ready to turn 75?
Yeah, I am. I am, and I've spent last night going over with Greg the new Chiron of Shirei Mishpachat Shine, which is very much like the old, but it's slightly different, and I'll get that to you like the May 8th, 9th, well before the 13th. I think
Okay.
all the songs. This is a funny story that Hanig was upset with me because in talking to Greg, who had a Eric Einstein song for his song, which he really didn't like, was sort of a placeholder. We sent him shopping and I called it Greg's new name instead of Greg's new song. She went a little ballistic. It's okay. He has a name, but he's chosen, you'll like this, and they'll be in the songs, Ilu Finu. He wanted something that was very richly steeped in nature. So you'll see in the song sheet
Great.
that's there. So yeah, you're still good for that Shabbat afternoon, right?
I am. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, so send me a thing because I'll have to go over. Of course, I don't want to come in cold, and
Right.
and
Yeah.
I remember there's one or two songs that I've got to relearn again that I
Right.
didn't know. Yeah.
So I'll also have Tully, when we take her out for breakfast on Sunday, sing into a recording her favorite version of Matovu, which is her song. But there's so many of them. She has one that she prefers. So I'll
Good.
send that
Yes, good.
to you. And they wanted, they listened for Ilu Finu to Miriam Margulies's and lots of other choral ones. And they said, isn't there something a little simpler that's more camp-like? And I said, okay, Jeffrey will have this. Ilu Finu as sung at
Well, I
Camp Cover.
do Miriam Margolis. I do that one.
Yeah, but without the choral.
Right.
Sing for me the one you do, just so.
Ilululu, ilululu, ilululu,
Perfect.
ilululu.
Yeah,
That one,
that's
okay.
perfect. There is a Grandma and Saba song there that comes from Noah Boudin that may the one who blessed our ancestors. And I'll try to find the link. It's a really beautiful and simple song. And all of these don't have to be the whole song, but just the, evoking it through a few verses. So
Yeah, so send me that one. I don't know that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey.
But I
Very
look
good.
forward to it.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon. Be well.
You too.
Oh, and I think Deb had her surgery and it went really well. I think I told you. Anyway, it's true. She did, and she's great.
Wait, which this was the surgery to remove the.
She had she had surgery to remove the ovaries, which had all the anxiety of the C word, which turned out to be, good news, wasn't there. And then when they, but that was prompted by having done an X-ray of problems that she was having with what's called a fistula, which is essentially a hole in your rectum that's subject to infection. So she had to go have that done, and it was delayed twice by COVID, but finally it was done successfully, and it isn't as much as a pain in the tuchus as she thought it would be. So she's good.
So, I know about fistulas because poor Zephany, in giving birth, she had a perineal tear from the rectum to the
cervix. Yeah, so, sure.
And she also is, and it's 3 years now, and it hasn't healed, and she might have to do the the same type of surgery. So it's been, so I'm aware of
Oh,
what
okay,
happens.
well, I hope it's as successful for her as it appears to have been for them.
Okay, that's great. That's
Okay, love to your wife and your
Right.
kids.
Okay.
Okay,
see you
Jeffrey.
guys. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. I'll enjoy the, yeah.